Thank you, Reverend Morris. Thank you all for coming. I just wanted to, before I begin, I wanted to say how pleased we are to welcome in the audience today Dr. William Stern, who is one of the most knowledgeable Judaica collectors in the world today, I'm told. He's a former Lincoln Square member and now lives with his wife Diane in Scarsdale. We're also privileged to have another very significant Judaica collector, Mr. Al Moldovan, with us tonight. And I thank you for your presence and encouragement. And I also want to thank our Executive Director, Joe Blank, for all he did to put this evening's program together, and give him credit for the idea and seeing it through. What is Jewish art? Isaac Bashevis Singer once wrote that he was brought up in 3 dead languages: Hebrew, Aramaic, and Yiddish, and in a culture, the Talmud, that developed in Babylon. The cheder where he studied was a room in which the teacher ate and slept and his wife cooked. Singer said, "There I studied not arithmetic, geography, physics, chemistry, or history, but the laws governing an egg laid on a holiday and sacrifices in a temple destroyed 2,000 years ago." To quote the philosopher Rebecca Goldstein, what might seem from the outside to be dry, anachronistic hair-splitting is, from the inside, experienced as shot through with the radiance of divine intentionality. And out of that room, that cheder of Isaac Bashevis Singer, out of that spiritual activity came one of the great artists of the 20th century. What is art? Some artists say that whatever they choose to make must be considered art. The dean of the acclaimed Jerusalem Studio School, Israel Hirschberg, once said, "I am not an artist, I am a painter." What is art? One definition is that art is an artifact or image with symbolic meanings, which is the basis for a means of communication. Others claim we can never give a clear definition of art because the mysterious is the source of all true art. So I return to tonight's topic. What is Jewish art? And if so, does it have a particular aesthetic or sensibility? What is the role? Is Judaica Jewish art? Why do people collect art? Is it about wanting to live with an object with transcendent and inspirational power? Or is it about money, a focus on product, which takes the artist out of the art and the connoisseur out of the collecting? How does Jewish art connect us to Jewish history? What has been the influence of the State of Israel on Jewish art over these last 60 years? To answer all these questions and more, I am pleased to introduce the 3 people who have been kind enough to join us this evening and who all bring a particular expertise to this enterprise. Our first speaker will be Andrea Meislin. Andrea is an art historian who studied the history of photography at the City of New York Graduate Center. She lived in Arizona for 8 years, where she was a researcher for the Contemporary Art Department at the Phoenix Art Museum. When she and her family moved to Israel in the spring of 2000, she sought and received a position in the photography department at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. She worked there for 2 years, during which time she had an opportunity to familiarize herself with the amazingly vital Israeli photography scene. When she returned to the U.S., she decided to show privately the work of several Israeli photographers. Then came the Intifada, and Rivka Sacher, the head of Sotheby's in Israel, decided to hold the first sale of Israeli art at Sotheby's in New York, as most clients had stopped visiting dangerous Israel. That led to the creation of Artiz, a week of programming to bring attention and support to the Sotheby's sale, and vice versa. Rivka hired Andrea to curate a small show of contemporary Israeli photography. She found a space in Chelsea and signed a 4-month lease. The show, which turned out, that show, which Andrea curated, turned out to be very successful. And so, with little or no gallery or business experience, Andrea decided to keep the lease and open a gallery with a concentration on contemporary Israeli photography. Recently, one of her artists, Barry Friedlander, was honored with a one-person show and catalog at the Museum of Modern Art. Her gallery specializes in contemporary photo-based art and also supports emerging photographers both through one-person and thematic exhibitions with a particular commitment to those living and working in Israel. Following Andrea, we will hear from a collector, Dr. Ira Rizak. Dr. Rizak is a professor of clinical medicine at the State University of New York, Stony Brook, but in his alternative career, he's focused for some 50 years on the collection and study of Judaica, especially Jewish coins and medals, as well as ritual folk objects. He is the current president of the Harry G. Friedman Society, a group of some 150 amateur collectors keenly interested in aspects of Jewish material culture through the ages. Finally, before we allow the panelists to speak and to interact and then to take your questions, we will hear from an artist, Andrea Stern. Before I speak of Andrea's artistic credentials, let me mention a few of her connections to this community and our synagogue. Andrea's grandfather, Mr. Max Stern, helped create and shape the vibrant Jewishness of this neighborhood. He was a founder and pillar of Manhattan Day School, where I was privileged to know him when I served on its board of trustees. He was the builder of our mikveh and an early supporter of Rabbi Shlomo Riskin in all of his endeavors. Andrea's cousin, Julie Stern Joseph, was the first congregational intern at this synagogue, and in fact, anywhere. And her uncle and aunt, Marcel and Belda Lindenbaum, have been longtime leaders of this congregation and community. The focus of Andrea's art has been her family, using her camera to try to, as she puts it, penetrate the multitude of unspoken messages that family members transmit to one another, while at the same time considering her place in Jewish tradition, a place she says is inextricably linked from childhood with her family, values, and celebrations. Andrea's work over the last 15 years is featured in a beautiful volume entitled Inheritance, which features an essay by Gregory Crewdson, the photography eminence at the Yale School of Art, and her work has been featured in the New York Times and the New Yorker and is in the permanent collections of the Philadelphia Museum of Art and the Jewish Museum, among others. And coincidentally, or perhaps not so coincidentally, she also shows her work at the Andrea Meislin Gallery. The first words one sees in the frontispiece of Andrea's book are from Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the fathers. Know where you come from, where you are going, and before whom you will one day stand in judgment. So you see, we have three fascinating and interesting and qualified people to address us today. And without further ado, it's my privilege to call upon Andrea Meislin.